So what next for Battlefield? In this video I'm going to take a look at Battlefield 5 and the progression of the game and what I think will happen next. There can be no argument that Battlefield 5 has not been the perfect addition to the franchise, with several problems stemming all the way back from when it was first leaked, or at least teased, by DICE. Since then we have received an absolute rollercoaster, and that has been well documented by myself and many other YouTubers, and to be honest, anyone who's played the game will understand. It's not been a perfect ride. As I mentioned, there have been several bumps in the road, and in some cases I'd say that DICE have not done themselves any favours with some pretty questionable updates and strategies. That could be said for the marketing, the way they've tried to promote certain things in game, the direction they've taken, and then just with simple things like the updates that we've all come to know with a Battlefield game. I'm not saying that it is a straight cut and dry situation where you have a game that you can look at and say it's no good, let's wait for the next one, because there are some positives to take from Battlefield 5, but for the most part I think we can agree it's just not what we expected, and DICE have a lot of work to do if they're going to get Battlefield 5 to a level that I think is acceptable, and with the time constraints and considering the new game will be coming out probably at the end of 2020, I can't imagine things will change a whole lot. So EA Play is coming up, and this could be a huge turning point for Battlefield 5. As we know, Battlefield is a flagship game for EA. It's not the largest game they've got, but it is a big one, and they do rely on it performing well, and with Battlefield 1 doing so well just a few years ago, I'm sure they won't be that happy with the dip in performance when it comes to Battlefield 5. Now EA Play provides them with a great platform to bring some new things to the table. Lots of content creators are going out there. I myself have been invited out there by DICE, so it's clear to see that they are wanting to show off some new stuff and breathe a bit of life into Battlefield 5. They've also had a long time to put some content together, and as they have been drip feeding us very little for the past 6 months, with one new map, Panzerstorm, that was pretty much ready on release with the game as far as I'm aware, and then a few guns here and there, I'm sure they've been working on something special. They have a large team over there at EA DICE, and they weren't even working on Firestorm as that was Criterion's project. I'm hoping that a lot more information will drop about Chapter 5 at EA Play, and I know we're getting access to a 5v5 mode, but that is something that I just have no real interest in, and while some people might enjoy it and that's fine, I think what people are after is a big update with a Pacific Theatre, lots of new maps, and lots of new cosmetics, vehicles, weapons, characters, the whole lot, the stuff that we've come to expect with a Battlefield game. One of the big problems that DICE have with Battlefield 5 is the fact they can't produce anything that is that popular. What I mean by this is they will bring in a new mode, or they will bring in maybe something a bit bigger than that, like Firestorm, a big Battle Royale mode. And whilst it's okay, it's not the best mode in the world, it's not the worst, it's just pretty good, it's never that popular, and it seems to die off very quickly. Now sometimes games just aren't that popular and you can't keep player numbers up, but there are some simple things that they've missed off the list that have caused this, in my opinion. Take a look back to Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, and to some extent Battlefield 1. The player numbers are still pretty good, and there's one thing that they all have in common, and that is RSP. This means players and communities can promote their own servers, they can bring their own ideas to the table and create an environment that is a bit more fun to play than what DICE themselves have come up with, but of course it's still based around the main game. DICE have said that RSP is going to be coming after the summer. This probably means that it will be here at the end of 2019, early 2020. I don't know this. I know a few of the larger YouTubers and content creators did have access to this information, but for me, I didn't know anything about it until DICE did their little announcement. Now, whilst it is great news and RSP coming to Battlefield 5 is going to be fantastic, it's another example of things done incorrectly. RSP will come too late for Battlefield 5. Yes, some people will love it, and I'll have my own server and I'll go back to playing Battlefield 5, but loads of people will have moved on, the game's player base will have completely disintegrated, and we'll be looking at a small player base taking advantage of an RSP system that should have been in the game on release. Imagine if Battlefield 5 had released with RSP. Imagine if it had released with far less bugs, and a clear roadmap as to when the new maps and updates were coming. I'd happily wait a year if I knew the Pacific Theatre was going to come out on a specific date with 10 new maps. It was going to be a massive update, almost like a big DLC bundle all in one. That's fine, I don't mind waiting. But the communication was never there, and months into the game, we didn't really know what was going to happen. It's the same with RSP. It's come at such a late date that it's almost too late. People won't really be that interested in the game anymore, so what's the point in doing it? DICE need to really consider this with the next game, because as far as I'm aware, Battlefield 5 is almost something that is going to be kept alive on a life support machine until the next game comes out and everyone will move on to that. So hopefully they learn from these mistakes. Now that's not saying Battlefield 5 isn't worth playing. There's still fun to be had in the game, and people who play it will agree with me that there are some things in the game that are really quite cool, but for the most part, DICE really needed to up their game after this poor release with Battlefield 5, and they just haven't done that. Whether you're talking about things like the Deluxe Edition owners getting shafted by EA as they didn't get access to what they really thought they were going to get, or the cosmetics just being a complete letdown with Battlefield 5, or maybe things such as being able to drag down players just being completely cut out of the game, or attrition not being what people thought it would be, or the lack of maps, this, that and the other, the list is pretty much endless. It doesn't really matter. What it comes down to is DICE clearly not having enough time to put the game together and then playing catch up over the next year or so. The problem with Battlefield 5 is it also wasn't that great. If it was a really good base game and everyone could really get behind it, I think there'd be enough there to sustain people while DICE got their act together, but as it is, the game's not that good. It's clearly not an upgrade on Battlefield 1, and some people do prefer the gunplay in Battlefield 5. Yes, you're kind of looking for silver linings at that point, and the main part of the game just isn't up to scratch. When it comes to the amount of time between Battlefield games, I'm really not in a position to comment on that. I don't know how long it takes to create a video game, and I don't know how DICE allocate their staff members. Maybe they've been working on the next game, let's say it's Bad Company 3. Maybe they've been working on that for 5 years, we just don't know at this point. Battlefield 1 did take a long time, and released in 2016, you had maybe a couple of years after Battlefield Hardline and 3 years after Battlefield 4. It's not a huge amount of time to create games. If you think back to Bad Company 2 coming out in 2010, Battlefield 3 came out in 2011. That was a year and a half afterwards. It's not a whole load of time, but Battlefield 3 was probably the best Battlefield ever released, and for its time, it was absolutely groundbreaking. This means that time isn't always the biggest problem, and DICE may only need a year between games and they could pump them out. So something else is clearly happening over there with Battlefield 5 really not being up to scratch. I'm not too sure what they need. More time, more money, more staff members, I don't know. I'm not really in a position to comment on that, but what I can say is Battlefield 5 from the outside clearly looks rushed. The fact that we haven't had new maps is either down to the fact that they don't have the staff members and the resources to create them, or it's just not in their plan. They're not looking to release new maps because it's a live service and not a paid DLC cycle, and that might be just the way the gaming industry is going. You pay for the main game, and if you're not paying for DLC, then you're just not going to get anything. If anyone can remember back to Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1, we had something called the community test environment. This was another build of the game that allowed players to jump on and test patches before they went live. Now I don't see that in Battlefield 5, I haven't really heard any talk about it. And as a Battlefield game changer, I also haven't been invited to many of these little events where we test things beforehand. In Battlefield 1, I was involved in quite a few of them before the big DLC releases, where we got to go online, we got to join a certain CTE server and play just a couple of matches, maybe 64 of us, or we had a European server and an NA server, and we'd just get online and start messing around. And it gave us a chance to check out what was wrong with the game. We found certain glitches, little problems, gave our thoughts on maps, and I remember once I was playing Heligoland Bites before it came out, and I thought it was an absolutely awful map. And I gave my feedback and said it was terrible, and we all said that maybe they should include some flanking routes underneath the mountain to give you some safety from the planes. DICE didn't listen to us and they didn't do anything, but that's besides the point. At least we got to test the game, and the balancing was altered after that initial CTE test because we had the enemy team push back into their base immediately. So they altered a few things, and having that testing was really positive for everybody. In Battlefield 5 you just don't have that, and that's just another thing. It's one thing added to the list. No testing, no real way of checking if things are broken before they're released. The recent update with Battlefield 5 has just not been any good. My game crashes all the time, and I've actually stopped playing it and gone back and started playing different games once again. And this happened a couple of months ago as well. I just put the game down and started playing something else. And I feel as if that's what a lot of Battlefield players are doing. DICE are almost doing everything they can to put off a lot of players, and it's really no good. One thing that I want you guys to ask yourself is, what has Battlefield 5 actually done that's better than Battlefield 1? Battlefield 1 took some big steps from Battlefield 4, and whilst I much prefer Battlefield 3 and 4 as a game compared to Battlefield 1, I can see the strides forward DICE made. With Battlefield 5, what have they actually done? In my opinion, they have taken some huge steps backwards, and I'm really hoping this doesn't have a negative impact on the next game. If DICE had the time and, as I said before, the resources and everything went to plan, I'm sure that they would have included far more with Battlefield 5. More maps, less bugs, and just more all-round content. They haven't though, and that's a real problem. As a content creator, I cover lots of different aspects of Battlefield, but one of the main things I do is look at the Battlefield top plays. We have 2 episodes a week, and we often look at lots of different awesome only in Battlefield moments. In Battlefield 3 and 4 and even Battlefield 1 we had a lot of variety and it was quite cool, but in Battlefield 5 I really haven't had a whole lot of awesome only in Battlefield moments. Yes, there are some things where you're like, that was really cool, that was skillful from the player's perspective, but have we got a load of different maps and are all the clips fairly different? Not really. For the most part I think clips are pretty much flanking routes with a Tommy gun or maybe some other assault rifle shooting players in the back on Twisted Steel, Devastation of Rotterdam, or just the normal Rotterdam map. It's quite basic and there's not a whole lot going on. In Battlefield 4, just after a couple of months we had a DLC, and that means we are already experiencing new content. There was so much variety there. There was so much for people to get their teeth into, and whether you were a content creator with 1,000 subs or 1 million, you had so many different video ideas you could focus on. Even with Battlefield 1 we saw the rise of many different YouTubers. The Broken Machine came from nowhere and became one of the largest Battlefield streamers we've seen, and Battlefield 1 was the platform for that to happen. In Battlefield 5, no disrespect to any content creators, but if anything I've seen it go the other way, and many Battlefield creators have just put the game down and gone and played something else, with Rainbow Six Siege, PUBG, Fortnite, these games just being more attractive to their audiences and, to be honest, more fun to make content on. Now, I'm not looking to leave Battlefield. Battlefield's the game I've picked, and whilst I will dabble in other games from time to time, I'm never going to leave the franchise unless something drastic happens, like DICE turned it into a mobile game or something like that. I'm just not going to leave. I love the game to bits, and whilst Battlefield 5 isn't really my cup of tea, I'm sure the next game will be. What I'm trying to say, though, is the proof is there for people to see. If people aren't creating content on the game and are getting bored with it and aren't even playing it, and the die-hard content creators who love Battlefield aren't playing it, then something must be seriously wrong, and it needs to be sorted out. The limited time modes in Battlefield are really a negative thing in my opinion. Yes, removing duos makes sense if you don't have anybody playing Firestorm, but removing Grind, one of the most popular modes in the game, I really don't understand it. The same goes for Rush. What happens if people stop playing Conquest? Do DICE remove the mode? What happens if people say Panzerstorm's a terrible map and we're not going to play it? Or, probably more accurately, Hamada is a bad map and people just leave the server when it rotates around to that map. Are we going to delete Hamada from the game? It's not something you should really do with a video game, and in my opinion, the way to have limited time modes should be relating to different challenges and things like that. Maybe you want to do something crazy, like a 32 versus 32 melee only server, limited time mode for a weekend. That makes sense. That's more of a challenge based limited time mode, and that could actually be quite fun. But going to all the trouble of creating Grind, spending valuable hours on creating these maps, and well, not really new maps, but at least altering them, and then just removing it after a couple of weeks, just doesn't make any sense. In fact, I think it was more harmful to the game than positive, although DICE don't release any statistics, so it's difficult to say. From my perspective though, I was playing Battlefield pretty much every single day when Grind was out. Since Grind has gone, I haven't played Battlefield 5. This is related to a couple of other updates and issues I'm having with the game crashing, but it's just not that fun. The same goes for Firestorm. Duos was removed for the first time after it came in as a limited time mode. I stopped playing that afterwards, and yes, they've dabbled in bringing it back and removing it once again, but it's just not attractive to me to play squads as I always play duos, so playing in 2 and having to have 2 randoms or at least be at a disadvantage is just not really for me, so I just won't play the mode, and that's the same for a lot of people. Devs need to concentrate on getting people into the game, playing the game, and then leaving the things that people really enjoy. And as I mentioned before with RSP coming, I think that, although it's coming too late in my opinion, will definitely have a positive impact. So a bit of a longer rambling video, a bit of a rant I suppose, as I let you guys know my feelings on Battlefield 5, but I thought it had to be made because this is a game that has another 12 months, 18 months left before the next game comes out, and the next game will probably start releasing little teasers and stuff within a year, and we'll see little bits of leaking and these guys who think they know what the game's going to be, and then I'll make videos on it speculating on this and that, and it happens every single time. But we've still got Battlefield 5 for quite a long amount of time, and DICE have to start turning things around, because if they don't, it could have such a negative impact not only on Battlefield 5 but on the franchise as a whole. Thanks for watching, leave your comments down below, and I'll catch you in the next video.